Imagine this, you're standing in the middle of a heated argument. Your pulse is racing, your chest tightens with every breath. Every word thrown feels like a weapon, every sentence like a sharpened blade. You're locked in a verbal duel, crafting your next comeback, not to understand, but to win. But here's the twist. You're not the only one doing it. The other person, they're preparing their next verbal strike too, not listening to you, just waiting for their moment to pounce. Then suddenly someone unexpected steps in. He doesn't take sides. He doesn't offer advice. He just leans in and whispers something deeply unsettling in your ear. You've already lost. Wait, what you're fighting? You're defending yourself. You're standing your ground. How could this possibly mean defeat? Because according to Friedrich Nietzsche, the moment you engage in this kind of emotional battle, you've already surrendered your power. True strength, he believed, doesn't come from being loud. It doesn't come from winning arguments, proving someone wrong, or dominating a room with your voice. It comes from something far more unexpected, something most people overlook. So what is this hidden power? And why, in Nietzsche's view, does silence often speak louder than words? Let's dive into his philosophy and uncover a strange, silent trick that just might be the key to real power. The illusion of power in argument. Most people believe that power is performance, that it's earned in the heat of debate through sharp comebacks, flawless logic, and ironclad rebuttals, that the loudest voice is the one that wins. But Nietzsche didn't agree. He believed that most arguments are not driven by truth, but by something far deeper, the unspoken needs of the ego. So why do people argue? Let's break it down. 1. Ego protection. People argue because they're protecting something fragile, their identity. To admit they're wrong isn't just uncomfortable. It feels like death to the ego. So instead of listening, they defend. Instead of understanding, they attack. 2. Power struggles. Many debates aren't about facts. They're contests for control. Who dominates the conversation? Who speaks last? Who makes the other back down? It's about posturing, not progress. 3. Herd mentality and social validation. Some don't argue to pursue truth, they argue to impress. To be seen as clever, confident, and unshakably right, they argue not to grow but to gain applause. To Nietzsche, these behaviors weren't signs of intelligence. They were signs of weakness. He believed that the moment someone provokes you and you react emotionally, you've handed over control. You're no longer leading the moment. You're being led by it. Will to power and the Übermensch. Nietzsche's famous concept, the will to power, is often misunderstood. It's not about brute strength. It's not about dominating others through aggression. The true will to power in Nietzsche's eyes is the ability to shape reality according to your inner strength, not with force, but with mastery. And often that mastery begins with non-reaction. Enter the Übermensch, Nietzsche's ideal individual. The Übermensch doesn't waste energy on emotional brawls. He doesn't argue to feel important or to prove others wrong. He selects his battles with precision. Sometimes he doesn't speak at all, because true power isn't in talking. It's in controlling the interaction without needing to dominate it. The power of strategic silence. Picture this, a tense business meeting. Two people are clashing, one loud, emotional, desperate to prove their point. The other sits quietly, composed, observing, saying little. But when they do speak, their words cut through the noise like a scalpel. Calm, clear, unshakable. Who really holds the power, Nietzsche would say, it's the one who remained emotionally unshaken. The one who didn't need to win the moment because they were already in control. This is where silence becomes your secret weapon. Silence used correctly is not weakness. It's psychological dominance. It does three things. It creates tension, and tension makes others uncomfortable. It makes people second-guess themselves. It forces the other person to fill the void, often revealing more than they intended. The Übermensch knows this. He doesn't fight every battle. He studies the battlefield before he even picks up a sword. Because silence is not passive, it's tactical. It's restraint with a purpose. It's a pause before the strike that makes the strike matter. Silence is the tool of masters. Throughout history, silence has been the strategy of the wise, not the weak. In Nietzsche's worldview, the greatest minds didn't win by shouting louder. They won by holding the room, by guiding the conversation without needing to control it, by saying just enough but never too much. Because silence isn't the absence of communication. It's a different language entirely. a language understood by the great strategists, thinkers, and warriors of history. Proof through history's greatest minds. Let's now explore three legendary figures who embodied this philosophy. Socrates, who never told people they were wrong, he made them realize it themselves through simple questions. Steve Jobs, who didn't argue with his team, he orchestrated their energy like a conductor shaping a symphony. Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated samurai who used stillness as a weapon and silence as strategy. Each one of them mastered the battlefield not with volume, but with vision. Because silence is not retreat, it's control, it's presence, it's power. So if true power lies not in reaction but in control, what does that look like in real life? Let's move beyond theory and watch how some of history's greatest minds embodied silence as strength. Steve Jobs, the master of controlled conflict. Steve Jobs didn't avoid conflict. He channeled it. He was known for demanding excellence, pushing boundaries, and at times being ruthless. But what set him apart was that he didn't argue out of ego. He didn't fight to be right. He fought to lead others toward his vision. Take the now famous internal debate over the first iPhone. His engineering team wanted physical buttons. They were worried a full touchscreen would be clumsy, unreliable, even impossible. Did Jobs explode in frustration? No. He let them speak. He let them express every concern, voice every doubt. And then, without forcing his will, he began to guide them. Patiently, strategically, slowly they began to see it. Not just accept his vision, but believe in it. And eventually they embraced what once seemed unthinkable, a fully touch-operated phone. He didn't win by overpowering their arguments. He won by aligning their beliefs. And that's the key. Most people argue to prove they're right. Jobs argued to move people. If your words don't lead to action, they're just noise. Miyamoto Musashi, the silent samurai who won before the fight. Now let's step away from the world of business and enter the battlefield. Miyamoto Musashi, perhaps the most legendary swordsman in Japanese history, never lost a duel. Over 60 battles, undefeated. But what made Musashi truly extraordinary wasn't just his skill with a sword, it was his mind. Musashi understood something deeply: the best way to win is to win before the fight begins. Take his legendary duel with Sasaki Kojiro, a formidable opponent known for his speed and deadly technique. Rather than meeting Kojiro head-on, Musashi played a psychological game. He arrived late, hours late. While Kojiro fumed with impatience and anger, Musashi remained calm and centered. By the time the duel began, Kojiro was already defeated emotionally. Blinded by rage, he made mistakes. Musashi, sharp and composed, ended the fight swiftly. Musashi didn't defeat Kojiro with brute strength. He defeated him with strategic silence, deliberate pacing, and psychological mastery. This aligns perfectly with Nietzsche's view of the Übermensch, the higher individual who doesn't react but shapes the reactions of others. The common thread: power through strategic silence. So what do Socrates, Steve Jobs, and Miyamoto Musashi all have in common? They never wasted energy on meaningless arguments. They didn't get dragged into emotional noise. They didn't react impulsively. Instead, they dictated the terms of engagement. They understood that real power doesn't come from volume, it comes from influence. So the next time you feel the urge to argue, pause. Ask yourself, am I reacting or am I controlling the situation? Because the moment you react emotionally, you surrender the frame. Why we argue: the psychology of losing power. But let's go deeper. Why do people argue in the first place? Most think arguments are about truth. They're not. Arguments are about power. And the more you argue, the more you reveal about your insecurities, your emotional triggers, and the uncomfortable truth that someone else is controlling your mind. Nietzsche knew this. His idea of the will to power wasn't about brute dominance, it was about self-mastery. It was about remaining so internally stable that others fall into your gravity without even realizing it. Modern psychology backs this up completely. One: cognitive biases. Your brain wants to win, not learn. We like to think we argue for logic. In truth, our brains are wired for bias, not clarity. Here are three major ones. Confirmation bias. You only seek evidence that supports what you already believe. Backfire effect. When someone challenges your beliefs, you don't reconsider, you double down. Moss Dunning-Kruger effect. The less you know, the more confident you become. Ignorance wrapped in arrogance. Put these together and what do you get? Pointless arguments. No one's listening. Everyone's waiting to speak. But the Ubermensch doesn't fall for it. He observes, he listens, and he chooses if the conversation deserves his energy at all. 2. Emotional triggers. Why arguments feel personal. Ever notice how some arguments barely affect you while others send you into a spiral? That's because we don't argue over ideas. We argue over identity. When someone challenges our deepest beliefs on politics, religion, philosophy, it doesn't feel like a disagreement. It feels like an attack, like they're rejecting us. And that's why so many arguments become ugly so quickly. But here's the truth: if someone can make you emotional, they control you. The Ubermensch does not react. He does not flinch. He remains sovereign master of his own emotional state. Reason 3, the need for validation. Ego disguised as debate. Strip away the surface of most arguments and you'll find something simple underneath the ego. People don't just want to be right. They want to be seen as right. They want recognition, approval, applause. But the Ubermensch doesn't seek validation. He isn't addicted to the herd. He creates his own reality. He knows that the strongest truth is not one you shout, it's one you live. Think of the most influential figures in history. Did they waste time arguing with critics? No. They focused on their vision. They ignored the noise, and they let their work speak louder than the mere ones. Modern psychology confirms Nietzsche's philosophy. Let's bring it into the present. 1. Power dynamics in conversation. Studies show that the most influential people aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who control the flow of conversation. They choose when to speak. They know how to pause. Their silence creates gravity. 2. Calmness is power. Behavioral research reveals something powerful. The calmest voice in the room is often the most persuasive. Why? Because we associate emotional stability with confidence and confidence with truth. Nietzsche saw this clearly. To him, power wasn't about dominance. It was about restraint. Real power is not in the reaction, it's in the response. So let's bring it full circle. If someone insults you and you react, you've lost. If someone challenges you and you scramble to defend yourself, you've lost. If someone provokes you and you get dragged into their chaos, you've given up control. But if you pause, if you observe, if you stay calm and respond only when it matters, you win. Always. So silence is powerful, but does that mean we should never speak? Should we avoid all conflict? Nietzsche's answer wasn't retreat. It was discernment, the art of knowing when to be still and when to strike. If the words you speak serve your purpose, you've already won. Nietzsche's philosophy was never about staying silent forever. It wasn't about shrinking, hiding, or avoiding confrontation. It was about power through choice, the power to decide not react, the power to engage, not because you feel provoked, but because you see the value in doing so. Ask yourself, am I speaking because I choose to, or because I feel compelled? Am I reacting emotionally, or am I in control of my response? Is this conversation worth my energy, or am I just feeding my ego? Because true power, Nietzsche believed, doesn't lie in the noise. It lies in the pause before the noise, in that breath before speaking, in the ability to make people lean in, not because you speak often, but because you speak only when it matters. That's the silent trick that gives you power. The balanced silence as a tool, not a rule, but here's a crucial truth. Silence is not always the answer. Yes, it can be a weapon, a psychological edge. But wielded carelessly, silence can become just as foolish as speaking without thought. If silence were the only path to power, history's greatest revolutionaries, leaders, and philosophers would have remained silent and unknown. But they didn't. They spoke. Because real power isn't in avoiding conflict. It's in mastering it, knowing when to engage and why. Nietzsche's will to power conflict as a crucible. Many misinterpret Nietzsche as a prophet of detachment, but his concept of the will to power was never about passivity. It was about transformation, self-overcoming, domination not of others, but of the self. Power is not just in silence, it's in control. Avoiding conflict entirely isn't wisdom. It's fear disguised as restraint. Mastering conflict isn't the same as rejecting it. It means learning to use it as a tool. The Ubermensch, Nietzsche's ideal individual, doesn't argue over petty things, but he also doesn't run from necessary battles. He knows that the battlefield can become a forge. That discomfort is the furnace of growth. Why discomfort builds power? Why do most people avoid arguments? Because they're uncomfortable. But Nietzsche understood that discomfort is not a sign of danger, it's a signal for strength. Weak minds avoid challenge. Strong ones seek it, because challenge is the test, the sharpening stone. Imagine a warrior who never enters battle, a sword never clashing against another blade. That weapon might look sharp, but it has never proven itself. It has never been forged through fire. In the same way, a mind that is never tested becomes soft, fragile, unready. Without conflict, your ideas remain assumptions. Without challenge, your beliefs remain hollow. Your philosophy is untested armor. Now think of the boldest thinkers in history. Galileo, who stood against the church to defend a new model of the universe. Socrates, who was sentenced to death for questioning the beliefs of his society. Nietzsche himself, dismissed in his lifetime, ridiculed as unstable, yet his ideas now shape the very structure of modern thought. Their power didn't come from avoiding confrontation. It came from choosing it wisely. Engaging with intention, not ego. There's a critical distinction here. Most people argue to prove they're right. The great ones argue to reshape reality. Nietzsche understood this deeply. The most powerful minds don't argue for validation. They argue to transform, to challenge the world, to stretch thought, to push boundaries. Let's revisit our three icons. Socrates didn't attack beliefs. He questioned them until they collapsed under their own weight. Nietzsche didn't try to comfort readers. He shook them, provoked them, forced them to face truths they would rather ignore. Steve Jobs didn't argue to win. He used tension as fuel. He pushed his teams through conflict into innovation. They didn't fight to win arguments, they fought to change the game. The Ubermensch does not argue for his ego. He argues with precision when it matters. When to speak, when to stay silent. So how do you know the difference? Speak when? The conflict sharpens your thinking. It reveals a deeper truth. It causes growth in you or in others. It shifts the power dynamic in your favor. Stay silent when you're only defending your ego. The other person is not open to change. The conversation is a loop, pointless and emotional. Your silence is the most powerful move. Arguing without strategy is a weakness. Arguing with purpose is power. Nietzsche never feared conflict. He embraced it, but on his terms. If an argument makes you smaller, avoid it. If it makes you stronger, enter it. If it drains you, walk away. But if it forces evolution, welcome it. Words is currency, spend them wisely. Now imagine this. You wake up one day and hear a voice. It says, you only have 100 words left to speak in your entire life. Suddenly, every word matters. Every sentence becomes a sword, a seed, a declaration. Would you waste them in a heated argument with someone who isn't listening? Would you throw them away, defending your pride, or would you pause, choose your words like a warrior chooses his final weapon? With clarity, with purpose, because words are currency, and the more you spend them carelessly, the less valuable they become. The real power is in restraint. Next time you're pulled into conflict, stop, breathe. Look closely, not at the argument, but at the person. See how quickly they reveal their fears, their insecurity, their instability, just by how they speak. The more emotional someone becomes, the more you can learn about them. And the more silent you remain, the more they reveal. And then when the time is right, choose your words with precision. Or don't speak at all, because power is not improving yourself. It's in knowing when you don't need to. Closing invite. If this resonated with you and you want more deep dives into philosophy, psychology, and the hidden dynamics of power, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. We're building something rare here, a space for thinkers, not reactors. So stay grounded, stay sharp, and remember, true power is silent.